Step across this line, I dare you. It's the Medicare for the Lazy Man podcast. The only Medicare podcast that uses Squatty Potty. And now, he once came second in a Doug Jones lookalike contest. It's Medicare expert Doug Jones.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Medicare for the Lazy Man podcast. I am your lazy man, podcasting about Medicare to everyone. My name is Doug Jones, and I am here for the purpose of helping you understand Medicare and to feel really good about Medicare. I don't know how many government programs we feel really good about. I guess I feel good about having smooth roads, about having our enemies get squashed like the bugs they are when it's necessary. And I feel pretty good about this government program, Medicare, because it's so reminiscent of the way that health insurance used to be, and that is that it had all kinds of freedom of choice. It didn't force doctors to hire expensive staffs of clerks to deal with all the paperwork, and it had a degree of friendliness about it that you just don't find anywhere else in most commercial health insurance products. So I'm going to say that Medicare does have some strong points, and I'm happy to encourage people to take advantage of those by sticking with original Medicare. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go to Amazon.com. I'll wait while you type that in. Alrighty. Now, in the search window, type in Medicare for the Lazy Man 2026 and click anywhere in that window. I think you're going to find a copy of my book, Medicare for the Lazy Man 2026, in your screen, on your screen. And what you've got there is an opportunity to buy my book at a very reasonable price. My book will explain everything that anybody ever needs to know about Medicare. Well, not everybody. My book will explain about 90% of what most people will need to know about Medicare. If you need to know anything else, then contact me directly, because you're going to find my email address in the book. I encourage people to reach out to me, and let's start a dialogue. In any event, you can purchase my book about Medicare for $11 in paperback version, and that's the most popular. $5, I believe it is, for Kindle, if you have a Kindle reader that Amazon supports. If you want to listen to somebody else read the book, I'm not going to name the narrator, but you can do all the work of enjoying the newfound knowledge without any of the work of turning pages. That can wear somebody out. And then finally, of course, we have, for the high rollers in the audience, we have the $25 hardcover version of Medicare for the Lazy Man. I recommend that only because it's durable. It will last forever and ever and ever. And after nuclear wars, after climate change has destroyed civilization, every hardcover edition of Medicare for the Lazy Man is still going to be with us, just like cockroaches are thought to be impervious to destruction of civilization. Now, there are two other books that you might want to think about acquiring. One helps you learn how to use the government website to pick out your own best drug plan, your Part D, that's D as in Delta, PDP, prescription drug plan. What you do is you search in the same search window on Amazon, Medicare drug plans, a simple DIY guide, and you will then have that book at a very reasonable $10 for paperback, $3 for Kindle, and I don't remember what the cost is for the Audible version, and it doesn't have a hardcover version. However, this is the kind of book that you're going to need to use every year because every year your drug plan that you have now might turn south and it might turn into something you never would have purchased. And it would be time to find a new replacement for that starting the following year. You do all that stuff in October or November. And the way to do it is to use my book to follow the instructions in the the government website and find out which plan coming up is going to be best for you. And that is an important thing because every year I get a bunch of disgruntled people who could have been gruntled, but they are disgruntled because they did not pay any attention to the warning letter, the ANOC annual notice of change that was sent to them by their existing plan. And then at the first of the year, they're surprised and disappointed to discover that their plan has changed all of its important conditions and it's now more expensive, or it doesn't cover some of the drugs that it used to cover. Many things have possibly changed. Now, if your plan is not going to change, it's really nice to find that out because then you can close out the program, close the cover of the book, and you won't need to do another thing for a year unless your drug regimen has changed and you have to start taking different drugs during the course of the year. But if everything stays the same, you can just let your existing plan renew and you won't need to even think about it again. In the final book that I highly encourage people to take a look at, when you're ready to enroll in Medicare, what you want to do is you want to have some professional guidance. That guidance exists in the form of the tiniest book in all of Medicare. It's really not tiny. It's the same size as the others, but it's not very thick. It is called Medicare Enrollment Guide. And you can buy it on Amazon if you want to, but I've got a little suggestion for you. If you go to the magnificent website that Randy Carson created for me, it's entitled MedicareForTheLazyMan.com, and you'll find a link on that website that allows you to download a free copy of the Medicare Enrollment Guide. It's a 20-page tutorial plus a few extra pages of fluff that will tell you exactly what you need to do to enroll in the important parts of Medicare. Medicare Enrollment Guide, it can be yours for free, and you don't even have to tell me your email address or your state of residence or any of that stuff. So those are the 3 books that I suggest you consider getting for Medicare. And speaking of suggestions, I'd like to suggest that we say hello to Randy Carson. Only I can be heard doing that, so let me do that right now. Hello, Randy Carson.
Hello, Doug Jones. How are you?
Well, I think I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm doing great. We're having a nice balmy summer morning out here in Arizona. It's most people think it's just brutally hot out here all the time. It's not. It's only 91 degrees today.
That's the predicted high, or that's what it is now?
No, that's what it is now.
Okay.
I don't remember what the predicted high is. Somewhere under 1,000, I think.
Yeah, well, that's good. Anything under 1,000 is always great. You remember that weather forecast that you told me about when we first met? You said it was the funniest thing you ever saw. It's a weatherman and his display, a TV weatherman. So he's standing in front of a display in a studio, and the display had incredibly huge temperature reporting from all around the state of Arizona. And I think he declared that people in our area were already dead because nobody can be alive at 1,000 degrees. So don't even go there.
Yeah, he actually called Cave Creek out in person. He goes, "Well, I think everybody in Cave Creek's dead because I think lead melts somewhere below that temperature."
Yeah, that's pretty funny. And then I shared with you the story about David Letterman. He used to show this little scene occasionally on his show, but he was a weatherman in Indianapolis early in his career, and he had a weather map that was defective at one point. It had the state line between Illinois and Indiana erased. It was completely gone. And so he made up a whole story about how the politicians got together and said, screw it, let's just make it one state. They both start with I anyway, so might as well just finish the job or something. I don't even remember all the details, but it was once again the sign of an entertainment specialist at work here, thinking of something entertaining for the audience. You wonder how their bosses feel about stuff like that.
Well, I don't know. I suspect that it probably perks their ears up a little bit.
Well, I take my cue from radio because I used to be glued to the radio back when rock and roll music was brand new and I was just a kid. And I knew that the radio guys, the disc jockeys, weren't just playing records that they enjoyed playing. They were handed a list from the bosses, and they had to do this at a certain time. They had to yell out the time several different ways during the course of an hour. They had to make sure the news started on time, and it was very regimented until a guy came along in Chicago in the 1960s named Larry Lujak. And people who grew up in Chicago will remember him. He's dead now, but he was the first guy who actually made fun of his employers. And he did it in often a brutally rude ways that were just outrageously hilarious. And he drew a huge audience for that. And he became impervious to damage from the bosses because they loved the audience that he drew. So they said, okay, go ahead, make fun of us all you want to. It seems to work.
Oh yeah, yeah. For some reason that name sounds familiar. Obviously, I wasn't listening to the Chicago radio market, but for some reason, the Lou Jack sounds familiar.
Well, he spent a lot of time on a 50,000 watt, an AM 50,000 watt station. So it's possible that you heard him at some point accidentally.
Probably,
I don't think he
probably.
was ever syndicated. I could be wrong about that. Then after Larry was a guy named Steve Dahl, who came into town in a big way and has been a fixture in Chicago ever since. I was a big fan of the early Steve Dahl show. Later, he's calmed down. He's about 6 years younger than I am, and so he has slowed down considerably. But I learned a lot of my attitude from Steve Dahl. He was never one to kowtow to the powers that be,
Yeah.
and so he again once he had a show and he was able to do what he wanted to do, it was highly entertaining. And in fact, he used to take listeners on a trip to Hawaii every year. And I was a winner of a Hawaii trip in the year 2000. So I got to go spend a week on the station, basically.
Oh,
And then,
cool.
and then, of course, I knew this was going to happen, but it still was an unpleasant surprise. Anyway, I got a little mail at the end of the year with a 1099 in it, and I had to pay tax on the
Oh
cost of the trip.
man, what a downer for the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But and by then, my tan lines had faded. So,
Yeah, and you had to pay tax. So, oh my God, what a downer.
yep, yep. Other than that, entertainment, marches on. And obviously, we don't have anything like the AM radio we had back then. I don't know if there's a top 40 anywhere or not, but I
Yeah,
think we lived in a gifted or a golden age of
yeah,
musical
yeah.
intervention.
Yeah, I really do. And not that I'm going to name any names of stations, but I just heard from a good friend of mine back in Omaha that one of the big long time stations back in Omaha is now defunct. But I have noticed something. Uh, Most of the stations that are going defunct are the AM side of it. The
Yeah,
the ones that
yeah.
are FM seem to be hanging in there. I'm not sure why the AM's going away, but
Well,
uh,
that happened years and years ago, and then a one singular event happened. One person came along that singularly saved AM radio and changed it forever, and that was Rush Limbaugh.
really,
He showed people that AM radio, conservative talk radio specifically, but talk radio would thrive on AM stations, whereas they had been trying to survive on music and they've been failing because the music actually sounds better on an FM station where you get that
yeah,
stereo effect. And
yeah,
also, but the other thing, I like AM stations better because when I'm driving across the country, I can lock on to say a AM 1000 in Oklahoma City, and I can have that from the middle of Missouri all the way down, all the way to Texas, to the
yeah,
Texas Panhandle.
yeah.
But I wonder if the stations you're hearing about from Omaha are going defunct, or are they changing formats to something that nobody would want to listen to?
I'm going to have to find out because I just don't know. I don't know the answer to that for sure. We used to have some really, really active AM stations, as most reasonably large cities did. But
Sure.
now they don't. I'm going to have to find out who's still there because one of them that I remember, vividly was KOIL
Uh-huh.
in Omaha, and one of the disc jockeys on that was I can't remember his name, but he was the one. He was came from television, and he came from I think it was the West Coast or maybe the East Coast. Remember a dance show called Shindig?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay,
I loved that show.
do you remember the disc jockey, or do you remember the host name?
Something, I don't remember his name, but I could pick him out of a lineup because he had very
Well,
sharp features.
yeah, well, he actually ended up doing the final years of his career in Omaha on
Ah, wow.
KOIL AM.
No kidding. Well, I'll tell you, that show premiered on television about the same time as Hullabaloo. You
Yeah,
remember that? But I always liked
yeah,
Shindig better because they had dancing girls. I don't want to say dancing girls. There's a better term for it. They had go-go girls, and then one of those girls stood out from the crowd because she wore big glasses. She had big rims, and so she looked kind of like a naughty librarian. And
yeah.
so then somebody wrote a song for her about the girl in the glasses, and she sang it one time as a guest musician, and it was horrible, absolutely horrible, made me cringe. And
Probably
but
ruined your memories of
I, I
that.
never gave her a second thought after that, hearing that horrible song. But yeah, Shindig, Hullabaloo, and there were a couple of other lesser known television shows that featured the music that we all loved back then. That was in the '60s, probably '64 to '67. I'm guessing is when those
Yeah.
shows were popular.
And another big thing back in Omaha, I'll pretty soon I'll run out of stuff on that particular topic, but remember wrestling?
Oh
Okay.
God, big time wrestling.
Big,
Yes.
big time wrestling. I mean, we had that. We were just like in the middle of it in Omaha. And we had a guy that was oh, you're not going to remember. Vern Gagne was a really,
Yes, yes. But he was
was,
a scientific wrestler.
yes, he was a scientific wrestler. And then there was many other, each of them had a shtick.
Did you have Killer and Mad Dog Vachon, the
We
Vachon
had
brothers?
we had Mad Dog Vachon lived in South Omaha.
No kidding. Now Killer Vachon was his brother, and they wore the same like goatee, like an Abraham Lincoln goatee with no
Yeah.
mustache. But one of them was bigger than the other. I don't know where Killer was from, but they wound up. Here's the reason I sync with you on the big time wrestling was because I did some time at Monmouth College in Monmouth, Illinois, and I didn't have this is when televisions were hugely expensive and hugely huge and heavy and stuff, and so I just did not have a television in my room, but there was a TV in the basement for everybody to use. And the
Yeah.
one time that everybody agreed, it was like prison. I'm sure in prison they argue over what channel or what show to have on, but this was the one time I think it was Thursday night. Everybody that was anybody would gather in front of the television to watch the wrestling, the big time wrestling, and it came from the Quad Cities, so the production values were a little scant. and and then they always had this little meek looking bald headed guy who interviewed the wrestlers, and he would hold the mic up in front of them, and they would yell and scream and swear and spit, and his head would be full of their saliva and everything. He would just stand there with the microphone and wait for him to throw the entertainment, and then he would say, "All right, how about you?" And I'll kill this guy. It was so goddamn funny that we couldn't miss it. I mean, I would, if I had a date or if anybody had something else to do, they would cancel it in order to be able to be in front of the TV on the night that the wrestling was shown. It was like 1 hour a week, but it was fantastic.
Oh yeah, yeah. Good memories. Well, I've got other stories about all-star wrestling, but we probably ought to get into
All right.
Medicare.
For you, it was all-star wrestling. For us, it was big time wrestling in the
Big
Quad
time.
Cities. However, I'm sure it was the same cast of characters.
Oh
And
yeah.
Vern Gagne always had the big belt. He always had the belt with the giant front on it to show that he had been named a champion because
Yes.
they couldn't give it to any of the evil bastards.
Oh,
Uh,
no.
and then
No,
some of these guys skirted the line. Dick the Bruiser, and do you remember him?
I don't remember him,
Oh, okay. I'm going to have to ask AI who was active in wrestling in the late '60s, and
well, I'm
you
going
and
to
I
tell
can compare notes.
you're talking about the bad guys that never would get the belt. I'll give you one name of a bad guy you probably might remember.
Okay, who's that?
Baron von Raschke.
Oh, yes. I didn't
He
see him
was
that often, but when he was in town, he was evil. He would get booed.
he
The audience would boo him.
he was evil. You know what he
Absolutely.
really was? You know who he? I don't even remember. His name was Jim Raschke. Was his real name?
Oh, really?
He lived in Omaha, and
Uh-huh.
before he got into the shtick of wrestling,
Uh-huh.
he was a high school science teacher.
You're kidding. Oh man, that's incredible. I bet some of these other guys have interesting backstories too.
Oh yeah, they all do. Well, I'm going to say let's go ahead and sell
Yeah,
some Medicare supplement plans,
absolutely. And
and that means I'm going to have to mute out here and let it go with the flow
yeah,
with Doug Jones.
that's me. And I'm going to turn my 20-minute timer on so that I don't spend the rest of your valuable time today yakking about Medicare. God knows we hear enough about Medicare anyway. Um, I've got a little article here for our Medicare Advantage Minute. It is always exciting to find an article that tells me, then that reinforces the problem of Medicare Advantage. It becomes difficult for people at certain times in the Medicare Advantage world when they've enrolled in Medicare Advantage and they've been there for too long and they can't get out to return to their rightful place in original Medicare. Because they can't get a Medicare supplement that will help protect them from huge medical bills. And I will say that the content curator went to a small girls' school here, a private girls' school here in Illinois, and she just spent the afternoon yesterday with a bunch of her friends from that school. And she came home and she was just glowing. And she said, "One of our friends that you helped out, you allowed her to escape from a Medicare Advantage plan and got her back into original Medicare. She couldn't talk enough about how happy she was, and her late husband was also very pleased with the fact that they got out of that stupid Medicare Advantage plan they were tricked into signing up for. And, that's a reward that I can't really replace. I can't purchase anything like that. It's just a good feeling to know that somebody was saved by my work against Medicare Advantage plans. So here's an article that says 25 health systems have now dropped Medicare Advantage, and about 2.9 million participants may be forced to switch plans. The count of hospital networks backing out of Medicare Advantage plans keeps climbing. A growing roster of large systems has now cut ties with, or at least scaled back, some of their private Medicare contracts for the coming year. And a separate academic analysis projects that roughly 1 in 10 enrollees, close to 2.9 million people, will be pushed out of a current plan as a result. The exits concentrate on the disruption on the very people who choose a plan to keep a trusted hospital or physician in network. In other words, they choose a plan because the plan's network includes a physician or a hospital that they want to patronize. And then, of course, somewhere down the road, disappointment strikes. But I digress. Why hospital systems are cutting Medicare Advantage loose? The reasons the systems give are strikingly consistent. Administrators point to prior authorization denials that delay or block care in their own clinicians recommended, and to reimbursement that arrives slowly and often below what the same service earns under original Medicare. Hospital leaders describe entire teams devoted to appealing rejected claims and resecuring approvals that original Medicare would grant automatically, an administrative drag that thins the margin on every covered patient. When a network spends more chasing payment than it collects, dropping the contract becomes a financial decision rather than a clinical one, and 2026 has produced a cluster of those decisions. The running tally kept by Becker's Hospital Review now counts 25 systems dropping or scaling back Medicare Advantage for the coming year, a roster that includes large names such as the Mayo Clinic, Mount Sinai, and University of North Carolina Health. Not every break originates with the hospital either. In some markets, an insurance company terminated the relationship or pulled the plan entirely, leaving a network out of reach, though no move of the provider's own, or through no move of the provider's own. The roster reaches well beyond the marquee names. Houston-based Memorial Hermann and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas went out of network at the start of the year. They're back in sync with each other now. As an aside, I have to say they've returned to being a twosome. I don't know about the other ones. Florida's Bay Care stepped back from certain Medicare Advantage plans, and Providence, which operates more than a dozen hospitals across California, fell out of network with a large national insurer. Several of those splits were driven by the carrier, the insurance company, rather than the hospital. A reminder that a beneficiary can lose access even when the local system would prefer to stay. The pattern is not brand new, but its pace is. Researchers count roughly 90 hospitals and health systems that have terminated some or all of their commercial Medicare Advantage contracts over the past 3 years. That's 90 hospitals and health systems that have terminated some or all of their commercial Medicare Advantage contracts over the past 3 years, with the sharpest concentration landing in 2026, this year we're in right now. Each exit chips away at the central premise or promise of Medicare Advantage plans, which is a defined network that a member can count on staying put from 1 year to the next. What forced disenrollment actually means for patients. Forced disenrollment happens when a plan stops being offered or a member's providers fall out of network, leaving the enrollee no choice but to move. A study published in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, and summarized by the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, put the 2026 figure at about almost 3 million people, or 1 in 10 Medicare Advantage members, the highest share researchers had ever measured. The trajectory is what alarms its authors. Annual forced disenrollment averaged just over 1% from 2018 through 2024, and then jumped to 7% in 2025 before reaching 10% in 2026. That's a tenfold rise in 2 years. The JAMA analysis also found the burden falls unevenly, hitting people in PPO plans from smaller carriers and plans with lower star ratings the hardest, and striking rural enrollees at nearly twice the rate of others. For an older patient midway through treatment, a forced switch is more than paperwork. A new plan can mean a new drug formulary, a new prior authorization process, and in the worst cases, the loss of a specialist who has managed a chronic condition for years. Continuity of care is the specific casualty a cancer patient or someone managing heart failure, for instance, may have to rebuild a treatment team from scratch, reestablish prior authorizations for existing prescriptions, and hope that the new plan's formulary still covers the same drugs at a similar cost. That 3 million people figure is a projection based on plan filings, but the mechanism behind it is concrete, and it lands on households at least able to absorb a scramble. So the open enrollment window that lets affected seniors move, the one advantage of timing is that the exits surface right before the annual chance to react. During the Medicare open enrollment period, October 15th through December 7th, the affected member can switch to another, I didn't copy the rest of that page. They can switch to another Medicare Advantage plan that may or may not be, allow continuity of coverage, or they can switch back to open or to original Medicare, but then will they be healthy enough to qualify for a Medicare supplement? In many places, they have to fill out a questionnaire showing that they don't have any of the major diseases that insurance companies are afraid of. And that often precludes people who have been thrown off of their Medicare Advantage plan. So it's best never to tempt fate by joining a Medicare Advantage plan. If you start out with a original Medicare and a Medicare supplement, then you're never going to have to face that horrible prospect of having your whole insurance plan upended and having your care for your medical problems disrupted. So I have a confession to make. I had listened to an episode last night that we recorded a short time ago, and I have a problem with what I said. I referred to lizards, and I said, I'll tell you more about lizards in a few minutes. And then, of course, I never mentioned the word lizard again for the whole episode. So I want to atone for that problem right now. I was talking about GLP-1 drugs, and the word lizard, and there was actually a picture of a lizard on the article I was reading, but I ignored it, thinking that I would have reference to that lizard later on during the article. But of course, that didn't happen. So I went to AI and I said, Claude, help me out here. What do lizards have to do with GLP-1 drugs? And here is what Claude, my AI buddy, told me. Lizards are the origin point for the GLP-1 drugs. EXENATIDE, exenatide. And then in parentheses, it says Byetta, BYETTA, the first GLP-1 receptor agonist approved for diabetes, was derived from a compound called Exidin-4, found in the saliva of a Gila monster, which is a venomous lizard native to the southwestern U.S. and northern Mexico. Now, who in the hell is looking at Gila monster saliva and deciding to try to find a use for it? I mean, first, do they try all kinds of other things to use it for? Like, do they put it in cocktails, or do they ask people to, put it? Do they put it in a shot glass and ask people how it tastes? I don't know what the heck is going on in science labs, but I know that the Gila monster saliva apparently contains this formulation that is useful to people that have diabetes. So I was asking Randy, but I think it was more of a rhetorical question, so there's no reason for Randy to answer. But I want to know what the heck scientists are doing in there, that they're looking at things like Gila monster saliva. But to read on from this article, researchers in the 1990s, notably endocrinologist John Eng, ENG, which I think was the name of the first famous Siamese twins, Eng and Ang or something. They were from Thailand, I believe, and they both had weird names like this. So anyway, this guy, John Eng, discovered that Gila monster venom contained a peptide that behaved like human GLP-1, which is a gut hormone that stimulates insulin release. However, it lasts far long in the body because it resists the rapid breakdown that affects the natural human GLP-1. That durability is exactly what made it useful as a drug. Synthetic Exidin-4 became exenatide, approved by the FDA in 2005. The newer, more famous GLP-1 drugs, semaglutide, like Ozempic and Wegovy, liraglutide, Victoza and Saxenda, and then tirzepatide, which is Mounjaro or Zepbound, ZEP bound, are chemically distinct, engineered to mimic and prolong human GLP-1 itself rather than being derived from the lizard peptide. But the Gila monster discovery is generally credited as the breakthrough that provided this whole drug class, proved this whole drug class was viable. So the next time you see a Gila monster, you should pat him on the head and thank him for his contribution to medical science.
They probably could have saved some advertising money if they just, instead of calling it, all these fancy names, Wegovy and, all that stuff, they would have had to put up a bottle and say, hey, lizard saliva.
That's right. Well, maybe somebody thought of that and patented the idea so that nobody else could use it. Maybe they're just waiting to cash in on that brilliant idea that you just mentioned.
It just so happens, it's interesting how coincidental things happen, but I read an article about Gila monsters just the other day.
And what did it have to say about Gila monsters?
Well, it said that they are not going to kill you, they are venomous, but their
Uh-huh.
venom is normally not going to kill a human in reasonably good shape. But it is one of the most painful bites that you're ever going to find.
Oh boy. Oh, I hate it when things like that happen. I don't like painful bites and I don't like being in places where painful bites are profitable. Now, I got to ask you a question. Maybe you don't know the answer. I recently read on one of these stupid neighborhood things or, next door or whatever, somebody mentioned that they accidentally ran over a Gila monster or something, and they took it to the zoo, and then they went to the hospital to get treated because they actually got bitten or something. And the cops were waiting at the hospital, or they took somebody there. My kid got bitten by a Gila monster out in the yard, and I had to go take the kid to the hospital. And I called ahead to tell them what I was going to do. And the cops were waiting there to issue them a like $500 fine, maybe $1,000 fine for getting that close to a Gila monster. It's illegal to mess with them.
Yeah, they are a protected species.
Well, that's just crazy because if they're going to turn on you and bite you like that, who's going to get close to them anyway? And if you accidentally get close to them, isn't it accidental? Maybe you shouldn't be penalized for an accident.
Well, that's a good point. It's a very good point. They're very interesting looking. So if you didn't know what it was, if you were like from Logan, Iowa or something like that, there's no Gila monsters out in Iowa. So you'd be looking at that going, that's really a wild looking lizard. Because we do have salamanders.
Yeah.
But bottom line is we don't normally have any Gila monsters. So you pick one up and they don't inject you like a snake. They just gnaw. They have venom glands in their mouth and they just gnaw on you.
Oh boy. I'm sorry I brought the whole thing up. And once again, my question remains, how in the hell did scientists decide to start playing around with saliva from Gila monsters in order to discover a health saving or a health enhancing chemical that happens to be in their saliva?
We may not. Go ahead.
Nobody's ever asked me for my saliva. I mean, they just don't care what I have in my saliva.
They probably know that it's not going to be as exciting as Gila monster.
Well, that's probably true. No girl has ever found my saliva very exciting. I'll tell you that right now. All right.
Especially when you were gnawing on her finger.
Well, yeah, or whatever, whatever I could find to gnaw on. I got a little article here, and I think it might be a little too long for the amount of time we have left in this episode. So let me go to a short little a statement that I wrote about Plan N because I had a client ask me about Plan N, and Randy is all excited because he has Plan N. His wife, Margaret, went to work when Randy was turning 65, did a lot of study, and this is before they ever met me, and they chose Plan N, which was an entirely rational choice because Plan N looks like it has all the protections of Plan G, but less of the cost. And I'm here to tell you that my opinion is different. If I had known Randy at that time, I would have suggested high deductible Plan G rather than Plan N because I refer to Plan N as a weak sister. I think it's a poor compromise between the expense of the very rich Plan G and the savings with some exposure to cost sharing of the very inexpensive high deductible Plan G. But they didn't have me around to tell them. So I've had so many other people ask, and the reason interest in Plan N has grown over the years is because so many people have Plan G, and then as the cost goes up and up and up, they get more and more irritated And so I think the insurance companies are worried about losing clients to Medicare Advantage plans, and they came up with an alternative. Let's pitch Plan N. That's going to be our new corporate message. Forget Plan G. If you want to save money, go to Plan N. Well, I've seen plenty of people with Plan N after they've had it for 5, 6, 7 years balk at the cost of Plan M because I believe it goes up as quickly as Plan G does. Nobody likes to have rate increases. The minimum rate increases you're going to find are with my recommended plan, high deductible Plan G. I think Plan N rate increases in some cases are as large as Plan G rate increases. But here's the thing I wrote to just send out to people that ask me about Plan N. This way I don't have to repeat myself over and over when I'm asked. So it's entitled Plan N, Facts and Opinions. Plan N, as an alternative to the more expensive Plan G, has become a very popular topic recently. Agents and companies are getting pushback from clients who are alarmed at the rate increases they observe with Plan G. I disagree with their advice. If you are my client and Plan N is your chosen product, I will do your bidding without question. After all, Plan N is not a Medicare Advantage plan, so it offers the freedoms that I want to provide. However, in my opinion, Plan N is a poor choice when compared to my favorite high deductible Plan G. And here are my thoughts. Plan N subjects the insured to a deductible when an office visit or an emergency room visit happens. These are minor considerations and a pretty good trade-off for the premium savings that Plan N has over Plan G. Slightly more concerning is the lack of protection from Part B excess charges, which can be levied in certain situations. If a medical services provider does not accept Medicare assignment, they may charge an additional 15% of the Medicare-approved Part B charges. Some states forbid this practice, but others allow it. This would be insignificant in an office visit charge, but much more of a problem in the event of an expensive course of treatment, a joint replacement, for instance. Plan N will not cover the 15% Part B excess charges as G and high deductible G do automatically. This means the insured with Plan N should do some pre-treatment research just to make sure that's not going to happen. In my view, the most important factor is premium stability over the long haul. I believe that holders of Plan N will suffer rate increases closely akin to those of Plan G, rather than the smaller and possibly less frequent high deductible Plan G increases. So I had a reason to have that thing out on my desk, and I don't like to get rid of stuff on my desk without putting it to good use. So I thought I would just read that statement. And that is my position when somebody asks me about Plan N. But once again, if anybody says, is Plan N a bad choice? I say, no, it's not a bad choice. It's a very rational choice. I just think you could save even more money by going with high deductible Plan G. And speaking of savings, I think we've saved a little time by having my 20-minute timer go off, and that pretty much stops me from introducing any new topics, Randy.
We are out of time, Doug.
Yes, we are.
What are we going to do about that?
Well, we might want to just tell the audience to go home. You're excused now.
See ya. Don't forget to leave your pencils in the box on the way out the door.
That's exactly right.
Okay, well, here we go. There's some things I need to take care of before I let you go. And one of them is write down this email address, dbj@mlmmailbag.com. That's dbj@mlmmailbag.com. That's where you can reach out to Doug any time of the day or night to ask a question or make a comment. And number 2, Doug, don't forget, is licensed in every state of the union to help you with your Medicare supplement planning. And that's a good thing because a lot of people have a lot of questions. It's a real scary time for some people, and it's very formidable. And Doug will help you right through that, hold your hand, and walk you to the finish line. MedicareForTheLazyMan.com. That's our mothership website. On the web, it's got pretty much everything you'd ever want to know about Medicare, and some things you don't want to know, probably. But you could also stop at Amazon.com and drop some reviews off for Doug's writing jobs, his books, And he's also got some audios, various different things, but you can all get them at Amazon.com and drop a review because we're always trying to stay ahead of the people that write the travel logs. I know that sounds fun, but we need it. So subscribe to the podcast while you're there. You'll know exactly when they drop, and you can be ready with your popcorn. Last but certainly not least, thank you. We thank every one of you for joining us today at Medicare for the Lazy Man podcast, but nobody ever knows how much time it took. It took about 32 and a half minutes with Doug Jones, the anti-insurance guy, originally from, not Arizona,
No,
originally
not
from
at all. Holy crap.
originally from Oklahoma. Now he's lives in Arizona most of the time, although he's not here now. He's down in the low ground of Pugsleyville in Illinois. And I'm waiting for him to get back home because that is exactly where he belongs.
Well, thank you so much. It's nice to know that I belong somewhere, and I can't wait to get back either because, frankly, Pugsleyville is not going to stay this nice forever. Every year, something bad happens in, say, November through April or May. And I don't like to be here when that bad thing happens. So I will look forward to having all of our happy audience come back and join us again for our next episode. I don't know when that will be, but it will be not too far into the future. And so I hope they're all prepared to turn right around and come right back and join us for our next production. Until then, bye-bye.